cousin marriage still makes worse societies. There is more cousin marriage in Islamic society, and I'm even granting it's just a side effect. Doesn't matter. That shows Islam has produced worse societies. Case closed.
Is cousin marriage bad for our world? Let's get to it.
So
again, do you agree cousin marriage is okay?
Yeah, again, so when it comes to exactly what you mean about cousin marriage, it's going to be very nuanced. So for example, in societies where there is a repeated cousin marriage that is explicitly condemned and something that is frowned upon within Islam. Umar ibn Khattab talks about this, and Imam al-Shafi'i talks about this as well, that if it is going to be repeated, where it is going to cause harm to the child, then it's going to be something that's shouldn't be done. That's what Islam teaches, right? So Islam, where it is implemented, then it's going to cause people followers of that text that there's not going to be repeated cousin marriage. But referring to simply like a one instance cousin marriage, I don't believe that would entail harm necessarily, right? You have to prove that.
So, do you agree there is far more cousin marriage in the Islamic world than in the Western world?
I don't believe that Islam is the cause.
But is there more?
You'd have to read the data, but...
So there's a lot more cousin marriage. And for example, in Pakistan, the rate is like 65%.
Beautiful.
Okay, so there's a lot more cousin marriage. Where are they getting that from?
Not Islam. Can you prove it's Islam?
Exactly. This literally will go back to every single one of the points that you bring up in regards to this. Mill's method of difference is going to literally be a thorn for you right now. You don't want to address the fact that it can't be a sufficient cause. If it's the case, it's not occurring in every single Islamic society.
That doesn't follow at all.
That's the crux of the matter.
No. Let me address that. That doesn't follow at all. Because there are several factors involved. Okay. So for example, in some societies, for example, there's Christianity is everywhere, okay? But we can say like, for example, if we go to New Orleans, there's going to be a lot more crime than like Vermont, okay? Why? Because we know in sociology there are numerous factors. There's a lot more poverty in southern Louisiana. So that's going to be another motivating factor. So that's what happens often in these societies. They factor out those kind of things. But the studies I'm citing have done multivariable analyses. They have factored out things like poverty, like education levels. They still find intimate partner violence, higher levels of child marriage, okay, more oppression and persecution.
So I want to focus on cousin marriage specifically.
Yeah, cousin marriage. From that. Okay, right. Now I want to get back to that point. Okay, so
can
is not Muhammad the pattern of conduct for Muslims?
Again, go ahead.
I just really quick, and then he could address you on that point. So what I wanted to ask you, or rather say, is when it comes to a motivation, finding a motivation for a particular thing, what he already explained to you is that within our Islamic doctrine, within our Islamic teachings, early on what we find, both the Caliph as well as people who are contemporary to the Caliph afterwards, they say that this is something which should not be encouraged. Okay, not only should it not be encouraged, but what we find is that they say that it is better for you to go and do something else so that, and he states the specific reason as to why. He says so that
why do they say that?
I'll tell you. He says specifically, Imam al-Shafi'i says specifically, so that your children do not end up as fools. He literally says it verbatim. Good. So there is motivation. Now this is a question I want to ask you.
Nature, right? Nature? Nature, yeah.
I'm not done. Okay. So when it comes to this particular point, what I'm asking you, is there some basis or motivation within Islamic text or theology such that the opposite is also allowed to occur?
Cousin marriage?
The opposite. So not allowing for it, or not encouraging it.
I'm confused about what you're asking.
Yes,
are you asking, does the Islamic text allow cousin marriage?
Does it allow for it insofar as not encouraging the closeness of it? Okay, because saying the word cousin is going to be very vague.
First cousin.
The issue... Okay, yeah, sure. First cousin is allowed. But the reason as to why it's not good is because over time, if you continue this particular type of behavior, that's what leads to these types of issues, which is exactly what Imam al-Shafi'i and Umar radiallahu anhu both state.
Where do they get that from?
So I'm asking you, okay, they get it based off of natural understanding.
Exactly. They don't get it from Islam.
Right. So
they get it from science, from nature. They're not, Islam is allowing cousin marriage. Because, you won't let me show. Okay, I let you talk for a while. Let me now address this. Okay, exactly. They were able to go and go, hey, all these generations of cousin marriages leading to lower IQ and all these birth defects, we shouldn't do this. But they're not getting that from Islam. They're getting that from their understanding of how the natural world works. Meanwhile, in Islam, Muhammad married his first cousin. He married his daughters to first cousins. So according to Islamic teaching, that's why it keeps happening throughout the Islamic world. This is why you have rampant cousin marriage in the Islamic world. Meanwhile, in the West, We have gotten rid of that.
Good. Notice what the issue is. It's not specifically marrying first cousins. The issue that they highlight is that over time, if it's done repeatedly, that's where the issue occurs, correct?
Where does Islam say that just don't do it repeatedly?
They're literally the sources that we use. So if we're going to go based off of an Islamic standard, then according to the Quran, you follow these contemporaries of Muhammad, peace be upon him, such as
they're not getting that from Muhammad or the Quran.
Hold on. The Quran tells you to follow in their example. If we're going to follow in their example and follow in what they say, such that it's not something that contradicts Islam, there's no issue with accepting what they say. So ergo, they do have basis for making these statements, because when the Quran, for example, talks about taking from people of knowledge, okay, people of knowledge is going to be an expert or having an expertise in that specific field. So if there are individuals who are Muslims at that time and they have some sort of expertise in the field of, marriage and how this occurs in society and so on and so forth, if they say that over time what they see is that due to doing it multiple different times, right, or, interbreeding multiple different times between first cousins, what it leads to is a deterioration of, whether it be brains or anything of the sort. And then this is something that should be avoided. You are to listen to them according to the Quran. And there's no issue with that.
All right. Now, I just want to notice what happened. I let her respond. She went on for a good minute there. I wonder if I'm going to get to do that. Let's see if I can get this.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So,
don't ask questions.
Okay. So once again, So once again, they're getting that from their understanding of nature. That's my point. But again, now we got to go back to the broader picture. What is actually happening? Islamic societies are producing societies that have rampant cousin marriage, and they're having lower IQs, more birth defects. This is also contributing to less economic progress. Okay? Because Western societies have actually gotten rid of it. They've gotten rid of it. It's all done away with. Very low, less than 1% in the West, for example. Okay? That just means we're producing better societies. Now, if you want to say, well, that Islam is not the motivating factor, I'm using your standard now. You're going to scientific aspects, people studying nature. So by your own admission, the standard you set up earlier, they're not getting that. They're not getting the idea that cousin marriage is bad from Islam. If we go to what Islam just says, guess what's happening? Cousin marriage is allowed and it's growing. Then we just need to look at societies at large. What's happening? The West is producing far better societies because we have higher IQs, because we have less cousin marriage. That is a contributing factor. Okay? And then I'm almost done. Meanwhile, Islamic societies are producing worse societies, more child marriage, more abuse, and now we know more cousin marriage, which lowers the collective IQ. This is bad.
Right. So to come to the conclusion that you're saying is that if you look at society X, society Y, for example, we see that X society has something bad compared to this society, but there is a few things that you're not factoring in, right? So for some odd reason, when I said let's take the sample size and spread it even larger, for someone we had an issue with that. I don't believe that taking the sample size bigger, where you can look at more historical context, undermines the prompt in any shape or form. Because you're still looking at society, you're still looking at the effect. And just because we see, for example, Western countries that are part of NATO, that have a better economic factors, and we have Muslim countries in the Middle East where they have worse economic factors, where they could be where they are driving factors for these consequences that we see, right? You cannot pin this on Islam and say that this is because of Islam, right? So I would argue that if we take the sample back even further, we can argue for things like alcohol abuse. We can argue for things like unaliving of the Jews, 70,000 Jews being unalived by the Christians, right? And this is from Christian societies. If we take this back, and also one point I want to comment on is that if we appeal to natural law as Muslims, that renders me a moral relativist. It doesn't follow.
That was something different. Okay. That's not what I was talking about.
I want to comment on that because for some odd reason you have an issue with Muslims appealing to natural law when natural law is something that is taught within Islam. Why? Because in Sunni Islam, we believe that there is going to be things that are going to be inherently known as immoral or the natural disposition that we can use, aka natural law. So natural law in Islam doesn't contradict taking the messenger to be the moral example because he's the one that sets those standards. And according to the hadith where he explicitly says, لا ضر ولا ضرار, no harm, no reciprocating harm, right? And the only thing you said, people interpret it differently. Well, the thing is, if you take the traditional view, that anything that entails harm, physical and mental harm, is going to be not allowed. Okay. So, real quick, would you agree that if we take the sample size back, then there will be different results from what you're concluding?
You mean history? Is that what you're talking about? Okay. Yeah. We're taking the whole of history here. Okay. Yeah. So you just can't go to maybe 300 years ago it was different. We have to take the whole of history here. Thank you. The whole of history shows Christian societies are far better. And one of the results is cousin marriage, consanguineous marriages. They're far more rampant in Islamic societies. So let me give you an analogy to help you with this. Okay. So take Ozempic. Ozempic was produced, they came up with it to help with type 2 diabetes. But then they discovered it also helps with weight loss. So it produced an unintended result. Now when we look at Christian societies, coming from Christianity, Islamic societies coming from Islam, one of the unintended results is cousin marriage. There's far less in the West, a ton more in the Islamic world. That just shows that Islam is... I almost was done. I'm almost done.
Clarify.
So Islam is producing far worse societies because you have rampant cousin marriage. Okay, you may not have intended that, you may not think that is, but this is still just a reality on the ground.
Beautiful. So again, you did concede that if we take the sample size, that would be different. But the studies that you cited don't account for history, IP. You would agree that the sample size that you quoted only
because they can't.
Right, exactly. So you would agree that it doesn't account for history, right?
They can't. It's impossible in sociology.
Beautiful, exactly. So when you say that, when you reference a model, for example, where it's like 1988 to like 2010, where you reference a country where it has like bad socioeconomic factors, it would then follow that we would expect there to be worse societies compared to the West. Obviously, right? But we can't take that and conclude that Islam is going to be worse for society. Why? Because Islam doesn't inherently teach those things are going to be abhorrent.
Brother,
it doesn't.
We're talking about what these religions have produced. If we look through the whole of history, what has come from Islam? What has come from Christianity? Which has more cousin marriage today? So, the Islamic society or Christian? Which one?
So if I was to take this, for example,
which one?
Of course, Islam would be better.
Thank you. Islam has more cousin marriage.
No, Islam would be better.
His question was, which society produced more cousin marriage?
Right. So this is very like flimsy because I don't know if you're talking about first cousin or like repeat cousin marriage.
First cousin marriage.
So I don't believe that first cousin marriage was like not repeated is going to be immoral. I don't believe that. We don't.
I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying cousin marriage is necessarily immoral, but it is. For example, eating sugar is not immoral.
Right.
But if you eat a lot of sugar, you're going to affect your health.
So
Likewise, we can set aside the moral issue on the table right now. We can set it aside.
Okay, beautiful.
Regardless, cousin marriage still makes worse societies. You just admitted there is more cousin marriage in Islamic society, and I'm even granting it's just a side effect. Doesn't matter. That shows Islam has produced worse societies. Case closed.
So
That's a beautiful conversation right there. Let's do a quick breakdown. Islamic sources clearly show that cousin marriage is permitted and even practiced within Islamic tradition. In the Quran, Surah Al-Ahzab, chapter 33, verse 50, Muhammad is told that the daughters of his paternal uncles, paternal aunts, maternal uncles, and maternal aunts are lawful for him to marry. In simple terms, these are cousin categories. So the Quran itself recognizes marriage between relatives within the extended family as permissible. Also, in Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 23, the Quran lists the women who are forbidden in marriage. It mentions mothers, daughters, sisters, aunts, nieces, foster relations, mothers-in-law, and others. But cousins are not listed among the forbidden women. That is why Islamic law generally treats cousin marriage as lawful. We also see this reflected in hadith sources. In Sahih al-Bukhari, there is a narration mentioning Al-Hassan bin Ali marrying two of his cousins. This shows that cousin marriage was not just a theoretical allowance, but something practiced among early Muslims. And historically, Ali ibn Abi Talib married Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad. Ali was Muhammad's cousin, meaning this marriage also stayed within the Prophet's close family line. So the fair conclusion is this. Islam does not command every Muslim to marry a cousin, but Islamic sources clearly permit cousin marriage, and early Islamic history shows that it was practiced. If cousin marriage, which is permitted in Islam, is shown to contribute to harmful outcomes in modern societies, then it raises serious questions about the real-world effects of certain Islamic teachings when practiced widely. That is why conversations like this matter. Ideas do not remain in books, they shape families, communities, and societies. If you appreciate this kind of content, kindly subscribe to the channel and like this video. I'll see you in the next one.